Hello, my name is Bubs, I'm an artist, and I like to hear myself talk, and today I'd like to hear myself talk about my very opinionated stances on some things I see commonly done in the art space. For the second time. So, a little while ago now, I made a video about art tropes that annoy me, and it seemed to really hit the algorithm and take off for some reason. I am very grateful for that in some ways, since it allowed my channel to grow significantly in a very short amount of time, but I also, in hindsight, am not the proudest of that video. There's a lot of audio issues that make the voiceover kind of grating to listen to because I didn't know how to calibrate my mic. I still don't, but frankly, if I were to do it over, there would have been quite a few things I would have explained completely differently as well. But that's not really what this video is about, though maybe that is something I could do eventually. Regardless, today we are talking about art tropes I really like. Not only do I, admittedly, want to capitalize off the success of the last video by making another one along the same vein, but I also got a few suggestions of people asking for me to make a video about art tropes that I like. And here I am to do just that. I prefer making positive videos anyways, and this is definitely a nice breather compared to my other current projects. Now, just like my other video, and I do hope that you all actually hear and receive this message this time, this is all just my opinion. Art is subjective, and I am not an all-knowing deity or prophet come to save the art community. I am just here to share my thoughts about what I personally find appealing and describing why for the sake of entertainment. You are allowed to dislike these things, and in fact, I can actively identify perfectly valid reasons to dislike these things. You are more than welcome to spark some lovely discussion in the comments about disagreeing or agreeing, as long as it's respectful, of course. Be nice, kids. Anyways, let's just jump straight in, and maybe let's talk about boobs significantly less this time. I like boobs, but that was excessive.
Pseudo hair.
Alrighty, I actually know this one is controversial. I'm starting out controversial, I apologize. But please, hear me out. As the transition title implies, I'm referring to the phenomenon where characters that have no actual hair have something on their head that still mimics the shape of hair. I'm talking fire hair, water hair, plant hair, cloud hair, snake hair, robot hair, tentacle hair, feather hair, fin hair, and even ear hair. There are a ton of examples of this sort of thing happening all across many different types of media, and I think it's really cool. Now, granted, I am a bit annoyed by the fact this is frequently done purely for the purpose of feminizing a character, meanwhile the dudes are allowed to be bald. I find the whole give the girl character long hair so we can tell she's a girl a bit of a reductive and even lazy choice, and I'm sure a lot of people out there are too. I'm sure because I've seen a lot of people out there be annoyed by it. However, when done correctly, I think it can justify itself. See, hair is something that actually does a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to character design, regardless of gender, and that cannot be ignored. It, and the lack thereof, can be a major contributor to a silhouette, style, or specific vibe all on its own, so I like seeing the creative ways that artists decide to mimic hair for characters that don't have any, or at the very least not hair like a human might have it. It's generally far more creative than slapping a human wig onto an otherwise hairless or very animal-like character. I'm looking at you, Tina. I think a really good example is the little fin pigtails on Jenny the Teenage Robot. I have heard a few people share gripes about how a lot of robot hair doesn't really serve any kind of functional purpose, but in the case where the point of the robot is to be kind of human-like, it is understandable that their creator would do something like give them pseudo hair, even if it's not practical, and Jenny is no different. I think it would only harm her story if Jenny looked like a much more simple and practical kind of bot, such as the one from Wild Robot. You should watch that movie if you haven't already, by the way. It is funny and beautifully animated and very touching. It also has Pedro Pascal, if that tempts you. Anyways, Jenny's whole struggle is around how she wants to be a normal, human teenage girl. Giving her attributes that would do nothing for her as a robot, but do allow her to fit into human teenage beauty standards is actually just super solid character design. Not every instance of the pseudo-hair, however, needs to specifically elevate the story, and sometimes it can just be a nice aesthetic choice that teaches me more about your character. And for that, my absolute favorite application of this trope in recent media is motherfucking Eurydice from Hades. Honestly, lots of ladies in the Hades verse have good pseudo-hair, but I will refrain from showing a bunch of examples as Hades 2 isn't out of early access yet, and I know a lot of people want to be in the dark about it until release, and I respect this. Regardless, Eurydice's tree fro is just such a clever way to utilize her being a forest nymph, specifically an oak nymph, and it has the side effect of making her match her husband, who I thought was also supposed to be a tree woman for way too long before my brain kicked in and I remembered who Orpheus was. Frankly, I don't feel the need to even explain myself much with this one. Granted, I am obsessed with all the art in Hades. The team behind these games just pays such good attention to detail, and every single line and color and pattern feels so intentional with them. Maybe I am especially biased, but I don't care. Look at her. Look at her. Did you look? Okay, good, thank you. Unless you just lied to me. Anyways, moving on to the next one.
Ahoge.
Ahoge. I hope I'm pronouncing that at least sort of right. I swear I looked it up and practiced ahead of time, but I am going to be saying this a bunch, so I'm very sorry in advance if I keep screwing it up. Anyways, ahoge is a Japanese term which essentially translates to English as foolish hair, and refers to that one little piece of anime hair that sticks up from the rest. As the name implies, this character design detail generally indicates a certain level of foolishness. I guess it is hair for foolish people in addition to being foolish itself for not sitting the fuck down. Traditionally, the actual term ahoge is referring to hair sticking up straight from the top of the head, at least according to my research, but for the purposes of this section, I am going to kind of stretch the definition past that to refer to any piece of hair that just refuses to get with the program. I am intentionally misusing the term a bit, is what I'm saying. I mean, ahoge as a concept is applied to very non-foolish characters all the time, plus this design trait, or at least similar things, is seen all across the world in all kinds of different media, so I do think this term has expanded quite a bit anyways. Let's just say, for the sake of accuracy in linguistics, I am going to be discussing ahoge and ahoge-adjacent hair details. We could be talking anything from Anya Forger's little baby foolish hair, to Bee's bigger silly strand, to Miguel and Tulio's little flyaway forehead floofs. Now, it will be no surprise that I like this thing if you spend really any time looking at my art, but there are quite a few reasons I like this little detail. I will try to summarize them into 3 points. Firstly, like the original intention of the ahoge, I think that these little stray hairs can do a fantastic job of indicating a certain level of silliness or buffoonery. With character design, I find that one of the easiest ways to make a character seem serious is to have their design be as streamlined and solid in their silhouette as possible. The less odd shapes and things that stick out, the better. It may not be everyone's thing, and it is by no means the definitive right approach, but I do find it to be a useful tool in a lot of situations. So, obviously, having things stick out can take away from the seriousness, in my mind. I often like to use it as a sign of youth, too, as a hair sticking out just feels like it really lends itself well to a scrappy kid. Maybe that is just because I had a cowlick in my bangs as a child, but still. Second, I think that little imperfections in character designs are really awesome. I know I've expressed this quite a bit on my channel now, but I really like adding in imperfections to a design because it brings a little more realism to even the most silly cartoony styles, and therefore brings a little more life to them. Now, you can do this in a practically infinite number of ways, from their clothing to their posture to their facial features. Arcane faces, and especially eyebrows, are a masterclass in this, but adding in a little stray hair strand or clump is just a super easy way to accomplish this goal. Minimal effort, full gain. Thirdly and finally, I just think it's cute. Sometimes something is just aesthetically pleasing, what can I say? Could you call it overplayed at this point? Maybe, and I guess I couldn't say that you're wrong, but come on, you really want to tell me Anya's little floof there isn't cute? For my example highlight, I'm actually going to pick a very random example that I have been thinking about lately. Goofy. I frequently think about Goofy, partially because he is a great character both visually and in practice, but also partially because I want him carnally. Now, technically, in Goofy's case, there's not just a singular hair, nor does he have a standard head of hair to begin with, so maybe it doesn't count as your standard ahoge. I am definitely stretching things now, and I acknowledge that, but I think that this is a genuinely good application of this basic idea that not a lot of people probably think about. Seriously, picture, or just look at the screen to see, Goofy's design. Do you think it would feel as silly to you without those iconic little hairs on his head? Because personally, I don't know that I would. I think that even though it is literally just 3 little lines, it could definitely help a person that has never seen him understand that he's probably a clumsy or, dare I say, goofy character. It's not the only contributing factor to this vibe, but what I am really trying to get across is that the reason I really like this quote-unquote trope is that it shows how even the smallest details can do a whole lot for a character design. These little hair details may not seem like that big of a deal, but they can still make a big difference. And if you don't believe me, here, I took away all of these guys' flyaways. Behold and suffer the consequences of your hubris. Go on. Take it in. Experience it. Experience the pain.
Mystery eyes.
One character design thing that I see a lot but can never get enough of is characters that you never see the eyes of, at least not fully. Whether their eyes are always covered up by hair, glasses, a mask, a blindfold, or perhaps a harsh shadow from a hat, I just love this kind of thing. I honestly like perma-masked characters in general when any part of their face is obscured, but I find that the eyes specifically being hidden stick out the most to me. Like the previous trope, this is honestly also something that should come as no surprise to you if you have seen a lot of my art before. I honestly probably do this way more than the ahoge adjacent thing. But really, there are so many ways that this idea can be applied. It can make a character feel more mysterious or suspicious, obviously. Most humans in general are naturally inclined to seek eye contact, even if infrequently, so being unable to actually meet the eyes of another human can make you feel disconnected and even distrustful of said other humans. I think this is especially the case when it is due to a harsh shadow or mask. I think it lends itself super well to villainous types of characters, sort of like Bellows or fucking shadowy figure. It's also great for just creepy, eerie sorts of settings or characters like Six from Little Nightmares. However, I also think that this can have the opposite effect too. In the case of hair, glasses, or goggles that always cover the eyes of a character, you can end up with a very charming thing, with a more nerdy, cute, ditzy, and or silly vibe. Muriel definitely falls in here. This also goes for characters that just always have their eyes closed. I love how it makes them look kind of sleepy or innocent. Those are kind of the 2 major kinds of routes I generally think you can take, but I also think that things like permanent sunglasses are great for depicting a really snooty, standoffish, or stuck-up kind of character, or that a blindfold might indicate either a very disciplined and focused sort of character, or perhaps the opposite with a helpless sort of character. From a design point, there is just a lot to work with under this umbrella to get across a certain character personality, but I also adore the story opportunities. You could commit to never showing off what's underneath their coverings and let your audience eternally speculate and headcanon what is going on past what you can see, which is totally fun. But you could also have the grand reveal. I love the grand reveals where you finally get to see their full face for the first time. I love the cheesy moments where they reveal their eyes to someone they are close to because they finally feel comfortable enough to be themselves. I love the shocking and heartbreaking moments when it is revealed that they have been scarred or disfigured from past tragedies. I love the hilarious moments where the reveal is that they were actually super hot the whole time and no one even knew. I love the arguably more hilarious times when the reveal is that they look completely normal. One example that I just think is genuinely so good is the Pyro from Team Fortress 2. Honestly, TF2 does a lot of covering up of the eyes and face in general to great effect, but as of the most recent official comic update, Pyro is the only remaining merc without any grand reveal. Pyro's exemplification of this trope is the one I wish to highlight here because of how it kind of plays with both of the main aforementioned directions that hiding the eyes can take you. Obviously, Pyro is meant to be a terrifying sort of character, and the mask really pushes their identity as this kind of untrustworthy, ruthless, and almost alien sort of character. To quote the spy himself, "One shudders to imagine what inhuman thoughts lie behind the mask." I can't do a French accent. I think I sounded more like a drunk vampire, but I'm not apologizing. Still, on the flip side, I think that Pyro's mask can make them feel really goofy too. I mean, First of all, we actually do know what thoughts lie behind the mask. Pyro sees a Delulu land full of rainbows, blunicorns, and bubbles, and overall just shows very childlike and jovial behaviors throughout their Meet the Merc video and in-game emotes, completely opposite of the brutal, ruthless killer that Pyro also objectively is. This contrast is amusing and, in my opinion, rather endearing. However, I find that the mask itself also has the capacity to be cute. In the comics, I often find that Pyro, especially when sitting on the ground, almost gives me puppy vibes because of the shape of the mask and how the goggles give them such big round eyes that their actual face most likely lacks. As such, Pyro's eyes being covered can either be terrifying or endearing depending on what each situation calls for, which not only makes Pyro's design incredibly versatile, but also helps to push Pyro's character theming of duality and contrast. It is great. TF2 has good character design, and I will never shut up about it. You can't make me.
Cheated angle.
I genuinely could not think about how to describe this in a simple phrase for the transition, but when I started to keyword search this thing, it turns out this was on TV Tropes, so I am taking their phrasing. Haha. So this is that thing where no matter what angle you are looking at an animated or illustrated character from, you are always able to see some feature of theirs from the same angle. Think like Goku's hair, or maybe Sonic's spikes. Honestly, cartoon hair in general is subject to this. It's a small detail that amuses me to no end, and despite it having no logical explanation, I do think it can serve an important function. To start with, it can just be what you have to do in order to not obscure major portions of a character's face. For example, your character might have a hair curtain. While it might be fine when looking at them from one angle, if the hair curtain always draped over the same side of the character's head, you could no longer see any of their face if you look at them from the opposite angle. Sometimes this is good for a certain scene, but this can take away from the expressiveness of the character overall, and as such, a lot of the times, artists and animators will flip which side is covered up according to the situation at hand. The more important reason, though, in my opinion, is for the sake of maintaining a silhouette. I am big on the concept of a character's silhouette being really important, so people cheating to keep a consistent silhouette is honestly pretty admirable even if it doesn't make the most sense. And this is especially the case in animation. When your character is moving all the time, that whole silhouette thing really gets put to the test. So if you can find a way to kind of fudge it a little, I think that's great. I think this is especially cool in 3D animation because it is not being lazy like someone might be able to complain about with a standard 2D experience. Achieving this effect in 3D generally requires extra models or rigs, or really manipulating camera angles to make everything work. I think that the Peanuts movie is a fantastic example of this 2D angle cheating brought beautifully to 3D, and listening to the creators about how they achieved each effect is honestly kind of exhausting, but also really inspiring. I love when people set out for a particular vision despite knowing it's impractical, and just keep hacking at it until it works. One example of this that is most near and dear to my heart, though, happens to be Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse's ears, in all situations across all media, tend to have the cheated angle effect. His big plate ears, logically, should only ever be visible when looking straight on at him or at profile, resulting in a completely flat shape for the other, and certainly only one should be visible from profile. But no, he has the full plate no matter what angle you look at him from, and his ears even line up like a mohawk in profile so he can maintain his brand recognition of those 3 simple circles. And as much as I despise Disney as a corporation, I do gotta respect the commitment to the bit. However, I think especially of the mouse's appearances in Kingdom Hearts, because Kingdom Hearts has made me care more about a lot of Disney characters than actual Disney movies were able to. In the first game, they actually committed to that consistent, constant 3 circles thing, regardless of the angle, but I think they sort of gave up after that because it was too hard. You'd think it would be counterintuitive, considering that they probably had a smaller budget and obviously less resources console-wise to make this happen for the first game, but considering that Mickey actually got to be a character with screen time in the other games, I get why the change was made. Plus, even if they were able to do it in pre-rendered cutscenes, it wouldn't be able to follow through into the actual gameplay without some absolutely ridiculous shenanigans that would still probably look like shit, so I would probably have given up too. Still, it is consistent on the box art, and I think that it's nice to be able to immediately find him on those character collages, even among his fellow Disney animals and many other dark shapes. I just think it's neat. Also, I have kind of a headcanon that the only way that Square Enix was able to convince Disney peeps to share their intellectual property was if they promised that they would render the cheated angle for the first game, and this amuses me.
Opposite antagonists.
I'm really struggling with these transition titles, if you couldn't tell. Anyways, it is a very common writing practice in storytelling to have your antagonist be a foil to your protagonist. It, in my experience, tends to happen somewhat naturally. If you want your main character to be brave and good-hearted, it is kind of a gimme that their main enemy would not be brave and good-hearted. If they didn't have a diversion in values, why would they be clashing in the first place? Now, you can very easily have this just be in the writing, but I much prefer when this opposition comes into their visual design too. That is, if it is supposed to be obvious who your villain is. It's pretty simple to do so, and it really doesn't even have to be the whole design, but rather a few traits or even just their outfit. One general group of characters where this can easily be observed is the Disney catalog. Mufasa and even Simba are bulky, with bright red manes, while Scar, their adversary, is more slim, with a pitch black mane. They all might be kinda hot lions, but there is definitely a visual othering happening with Scar to put him at odds with our hero lions. Slim figure and bright colors for Ariel, large figure and dark colors for Ursula. Tiana, when she isn't a lame frog, dresses very practically, while Facilier is dressed very flashy. The same kinds of contrasts can be seen with most of the Disney hero and villain duos. Quasimodo and Frollo, Hercules and Hades, Aurora and Maleficent, Sophia and Cedric, need I say more? There are many examples all across media, but I have decided to discuss one specific example because I have strong opinions about this character and just need an excuse to talk about him, even for a little bit. Slade from the Teen Titans. Not Teen Titans Go, actual original Teen Titans. Now, obviously, the bright colors versus darker colors thing applies here as well, plus Robin being comparatively quite smaller on his team, while Slade is, a fully grown man. But one thing that makes Slade and Robin great visual foils is their faces. Robin is a character that falls in line with one of the previous tropes. You never see his eyes because he's always wearing that eye mask, even when he is not wearing the rest of his usual getup. Makes him kind of mysterious, but it mostly just shows a dedication to his hero persona, and even perhaps a bit of a reluctance to be Robin the boy and not Robin the hero. It's endearing. Still, despite Robin's eye covering, it's never a guessing game as to what he's feeling, partially because his mask moves around as if they were actually his eyes, but also partially because you can still see the rest of his face. Slade, on the other hand, has everything covered up except for one eye. Couple that with his typically cool, smooth Ron Perlman voice that just gives nothing away, he is impossible to read. Robin, without eyes, in his face, is still human, still accessible, whereas Slade, with a visible eye, in his face, is just a hunk of cold, soulless metal. It is perfect for their characterization, and that is just good character design, baby. I don't know what else to say. Good stuff.
Mixed media madness.
Alrighty, this one I just do not actually know that it is common enough to actually call it a trope, but I still really like this when it happens and I want to talk about it. This is my channel, so I'm allowed to do that. So, I love animation. It is, in my opinion, kind of the best form of visual entertainment, if for no other reason than its versatility. You can do literally whatever you want in animation. Have any style, have any rules of physics that you want, and there are so many different ways that you can achieve animation. You can use digital programs in either 2D or 3D. You could use stop motion with paper or clay. You could make a goddamn flipbook if you want, and all of these things can achieve the illusion of real-time movement. It's amazing. And what is even more amazing is when an animated show or movie slaps together multiple types of animation at once. I'm not talking just animating in a bunch of different styles, which is also cool, but rather when you have different techniques to animate. You know, mixing 2D and 3D animation, maybe throwing some claymation into a random Gravity Falls episode. It is genuinely one of the coolest things to me, because it takes a lot of extra work and creativity to make a bunch of different animation techniques work together in the same environment. Spider-Verse and Arcane do this beautifully by putting all these gorgeous 2D animated effects over their 3D models. 2 Arcane mentions in one video. It's almost like I love the show a whole lot and have a giant poster of it over my bed so that some of the characters can intently stare at me while I sleep. I think this thing can be used to great effect when you want to make something feel super uncanny, like how in Courage the Cowardly Dog, pretty much everything is 2D, but there are a couple sequences that are done in the very uncanny early 2000s CGI animation. It is perfect for those critters that are supposed to be uncanny, like with King Ramses or the perfect blue thing. I hate that thing. Still, I think my favorite approach for this is when a piece of media fully commits to mixing up the animation techniques to just make things as bonkers as possible. One example that immediately comes to mind is Smiling Friends, of course, which utilizes live action, 3D animation, rotoscoped animation, claymation, and then standard 2D cartooning. The world is supposed to be kind of weird and random, so having all these different styles going on at one time just really elevates how weird and random it is. Another great example is the web series Ina. Ina? I have only ever said it in real life as Ina. Whatever. The point is, the whole series has all of these different styles of animation and rendering and even camera work to really help elicit the vibes of old school, trippy computer games. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. It's short and free. Have fun. The highlight example that I'll be going with for here, as I think this is kind of my personal favorite of the examples of this trope being fully explored, is none other than the amazing world of Gumball. Tawag does this trope, but like on steroids, and I mean that in the best possible way. There's a very distinct 2D style, which frankly doesn't stand out much among the entire Cartoon Network catalog. It's kind of a typical Bean style family. However, Tawag also touts a lot of 3D animation with a very distinct style and feel to it, seen in characters like Miss Simeon and Rob. Then you have all the 3D characters rendered to look like they are made of clay or felt to kind of do this pseudo-claymation or puppetry thing, which is really cool. There are also plenty of characters that are consistently done with pixel art, papercraft, and live action. Even the way they do the backgrounds and environments are done with completely different styles and techniques, and you should definitely research how it's done for yourself, since it's genuinely fascinating to read about their process. The show constantly explores different styles and mediums for individual sequences or episodes as a part of a gag or plot point, and they've even brought in a lot of artists not usually on the crew to bring their unique flavors into the mix too, like Blink Industries. Wait, they actually did a collab with the folks behind Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared? Damn, I really need to sit down and watch all of it finally. I keep meaning to, but there's just so much. Maybe if I do, I can make a video essay about it or something. Anyways, these mixed media shenanigans not only give each individual character a very unique identity, like I am very easily able to recognize a lot of these characters, even if they are just relegated to the background, simply because of how little each character just blends in or repeats, but I think that they give the show overall a very unique identity. It is rare that a show experiments with this many things at once, and I think that, frankly, more needs to be done to celebrate this. Mixed media is hard, and committing this fully to it is even harder. So go watch Tawag, go watch Ina, go watch Smiling Friends. Tell me more examples that you know of in the comments, please. I want to see it more. I want to celebrate it more. I just want more.
Cute and evil.
Look, I now have one more thing in this video than I had in my negative one. I am a positive person. I swear. This is the last one, though. I love evil characters that don't look evil. It just always makes me feel joy. It works great for comedic or petty villains like Kilgore or even Plankton, even if you personally don't think Plankton is cute. He falls under this category in my mind because he's small. and has a big eye and is often treated in an infantilized way similarly to these other villains. But anyway, it works well for those villains because you aren't supposed to take them too seriously. I also find that these characters are very endearing, similar to how a bumbling sort of villain might be. For the record, while I also love the bumbling sort of villain, and I think that bumbling villains can be cute, it usually has more to do with their personalities rather than their actual visuals, which is what I'm trying to talk about here. Even though you don't necessarily agree with the motives of the person, you still wish they could get a win. They work so hard to overcome the odds and live up to their full evil potential despite their unfortunate physical shortcomings. Come on, we all love an underdog. I also think it can be extremely funny in situations where you have a super cutesy character or entity that is actually a horrifically terrifying monster that absolutely needs to be taken seriously. The first two things I think of is the rabbit from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and then the king vermin from Hades. Two adorable, seemingly non-threatening critters that can and will destroy you if given the opportunity. The subversion of my expectations has made me laugh on many occasions. I think that the Tonberry also kind of falls in this category, and perhaps about half of all Pokemon if you actually read their dex entries. This candle is pure evil. I do still think he's really cute though, and he is going on my team. But my favorite types of this trope are where you feel threatened even while the character is generally non-threatening in appearance, because their actions are just that punchy. The ones that use their cutesy exterior as a cover for their fiendish interior. And I'm not talking about relatively mindless critters anymore. No, I'm talking about Darla. I'm talking about Lotso. I'm talking about Cozy Glow. I'm talking about Flowey. I'm talking about Aquamarine. I'm talking about those sick little bastards who will lull you into a false sense of security just so they can maintain power and control over the world around them. On one hand, the level of manipulation these evil cute guys tend to get up to is angering, but on the other hand, I have to respect it. These sick motherfuckers lean into this expectation that a cute body or a fuzzy face or a frilly dress come with innocence and joy, and frankly, fair enough. Work with what you got. I mean, I still hate this freaky little bear, but can you honestly say he's a bad villain? No. One interesting example that I really like and that I'll bring up is Ciel from Black Butler. Fun fact, Black Butler was the first anime I ever watched. No, I don't know why or how, and yes, I know that it was a mistake in hindsight for that to be my first, but I wasn't turned off by the genre, and Grell is my queen, so I guess all's well that ends well. Anyways, Ciel, despite undoubtedly being the protagonist of the series, is a very morally gray character. In fact, I would argue he is a very dark gray sort of character. It just so happens that he's usually opposed to characters that are part of murder cults or trafficking rings for people that really relate to that one Oingo Boingo song. It's hard to be worse off than those guys in the field of ethics. Still, Ciel is more than happy to do some very fucked up things to achieve his goals, but no one would ever expect that from him because, after all, he's just a cute little boy. He, in fact, constantly, purposely uses this to his advantage, playing up his vulnerability and innocence when it suits him to do so. Genuinely such an interesting character, and an expert usage of this trope. And that's all I have to talk about. For now, anyways. I hope that if you were working on something while you watched this, you got a lot of stuff done. If not, and you were just watching this to take a break, that's great too. Life is hard and you deserve a break. If you're new to hanging out here, I'd love it if you'd stick around, maybe subscribe, but I understand if not. You're probably busy, so no hard feelings. If you're not new, thanks for coming back. Always nice to see a familiar face, and yours is especially nice. Regardless of whether you're a new or old friend, thanks for watching the whole thing. I hope it was fun enough to make it worth your while. And I hope the way I did the visuals was good. I know that a lot of people really like my talk sprites, but they are the hardest part of, editing, so I'm still experimenting with new stuff to find out what works the best for me and still gives the best result, so let me know what you think. Also, if you have any other sorts of things you want to hear my opinion on, let me know that too. I could always use more ideas since it seems this whole YouTube thing has taken off. Alright, enough talking. I'll let you go. Drink some water, get up and stretch, and remember that you matter. Bye. I'm making some tea. Tea. T-E-A-T. T-T-T. I don't like coffee. I like tea. Fellas, is it gay to drink tea?